So hi everyone, I'm Maggie Arias, the AILA South Florida chapter president, and I'm here today with three guests. I've got Adonia Simpson, Randy McGroarty, and Luciana Zemas-Fisher. Hi everybody, how are you doing today? Randy, I'd love for you to talk to us a little bit about DED for Venezuelans. I know that it's sort of the talk of the town, if you will, and I wanted to set the record straight. There's been so much information on social media, so many inquiries from the community at large, and I wanted you to give us a little bit of information so that practitioners at AILA know how to communicate with the general public and really with each other.
So literally at the 11th hour of the Trump administration, the night before the new administration is sworn in, January 19th, I can probably tell you the exact time because I was busy texting when the announcement was made. The Trump administration granted deferred enforced departure to the Venezuelan community. What it did is basically a promise not to deport Venezuelans while the situation in Venezuela is so destroyed, basically. Now, that DED is a blanket promise not to deport these individuals as long as they arrived in the United States as of January 20th. And with that, they will be eligible for work authorization. So DED is not part of any statute, by the way. It is a promise not to deport people who are designated with this protection. The only proof that they will ever get is a work permit, and we're waiting instructions on how to file the work permit. Now, at least one other country currently is accepting applications for DED. That's Liberia, and USCIS has set up a special PO box and instructions for Liberians. Basically, the Liberians who are going to be eligible are Liberians who once had TPS. So the proof of that, you mail in the I-765 with your old TPS re-registration. Boom, it's done. Now, it's quite possible that USCIS will use the same PO box. It's quite possible that they will request proof of an individual's arrival to the United States on or before January 20th and proof that they've been residing here. We don't know yet because the instructions haven't been issued, and the instructions need to be promulgated in the federal notice in the register. So we're waiting for that. We're waiting patiently because there's some thinking that the delay in issuing the guidance is really because they're considering granting temporary protected status to this population.
And Randy, a quick follow-up question. Do you have to have a deportation order to be eligible for DED for Venezuelans?
So there's been a lot of chatter about the requirement that you have a removal, deportation, exclusion order. And it came because people really read the memorandum. And in that memorandum, it talks about individuals who were actually physically removed to Venezuela before the granting of this. They are included in the list of exceptions, not in the list of eligibility requirements. So, and it only applies to individuals who physically were removed to Venezuela prior to this. So the idea is, in its standard language, that the US government isn't going to bring back anyone who would have otherwise met the criteria after they have been physically removed, deported, or excluded. So absolutely, individuals who have not had a removal order are eligible. In fact, everyone is eligible as long as they have the basic eligibility criteria: arrival in the United States on or before January 20th, proof that they were physically residing as of the date of their application, and significantly, no more than 2 misdemeanors or 1 felony. 2 misdemeanors or 1 felony will knock them out. Other than that, they will be eligible.
Okay, Randy, thank you so much for that. And quick follow-up too. I know it's generally regarded that TPS is actually an upgrade from DED. Can you tell us why that is?
The difference between TPS and DED is statutory. Temporary protected status is a recognized immigration status within the Immigration and Nationality Act. DED appears nowhere except in a vague reference to DED eligible people having access to a work permit. It's the only place that it exists. It exists as part of the executive's discretion, prosecutorial discretion, not to deport certain individuals. By the way, prior to DED, it was a form of indefinite voluntary departure. And it was this same mechanism that allowed the first wave of Cubans to remain in Miami before we had access to the Cuban Adjustment Act. So there's a long history to this and a long connection with the Miami community.
I like that little factoid. Thank you for that. Adonia, did you have any follow-up questions as well for Randy?
Yeah, Randy, what about the jurisdictional differences regarding how different jurisdictions view TPS as being perhaps an admission, and that might be another reason that TPS is superior to DED. Would you agree?
So the law of TPS is evolving. For a good decade, TPS and travel with TPS was deemed by USCIS as a cure to an EWI entry. They've backpedaled on this issue. They've backpedaled on the issue of whether they have jurisdiction over parolees who are returning. The law is quite complex right now. We've seen different circuits, by the way, go different ways in terms of the application for TPS as an admission. You know, it looks like an admission, right? You're presenting yourself to immigration, to USCIS. They're reviewing your admissibility as part of their analysis for TPS. It's slightly different, but it looks like an admission, and several circuits have said it's an admission. At least two very significant circuits have gone the other way and said it's absolutely not an admission for purposes of adjustment. And of course, one of them is the 11th Circuit, which we're stuck with. The other is their evil twin, the 5th Circuit. So this is going to the Supreme Court, and we'll see what happens. But this whole thing, by the way, could be easily dispatched by the new administration, adopting the 3 circuits that have the position of the 3 circuits that have said it is in fact an admission.
Incredible. Randy, this has been so helpful. I know that many attorneys, specifically in AILA and other attorneys who may not be members, have really been sort of swarmed with questions about DED for Venezuelans. I know that it's been said in committee meetings and just general networking meetings that some attorneys are taking deposits and hoping to represent individuals in the future. So I think it's critical that this message be sent out to the membership to really let them know what are the pros and cons. What's the reason to wait? What do you tell a Venezuelan who says, well, I've been told by 2 or 3 prior attorneys that I can actually apply for DED now, and we can just send it into the Liberian service center that would process that. And this is, of course, a mistake because it could really get lost in that process. I know you've said this before. So these are things that our membership really values, is kind of knowing how to best represent in a situation where we know this is like ground zero for immigration fraud, for 1. 2, mistakes in applications being sent to somewhere where you're not really able to avail yourself yet of the benefit. These are all things that I'm sure you and CLS are acutely familiar with.
So, it's quite possible that USCIS could designate the same PO box for Venezuela as they did for Liberia. Our view at CLS is it's not worth the risk. Let's wait and see, particularly if there could be a chance for an upgrade to TPS, right? Then you will definitely lose the money on the I-765 DED application. The instruction for Liberia, as I said, was fairly easy because you had to have been in TPS status in order to qualify for DED status. This is slightly different. These are individuals who may or may not be known to immigration, and they have to prove that they were here on a specific date. So it could be that USCIS is going to issue a special addendum for filing if it remains DED. And I say this because the last time we had this kind of unsolicited Venezuelan that wasn't connected to a TPS situation was Haiti back in the late 90s in anticipation of HARIFA. And they did in fact USCIS created an addendum to file with the I-765. So it's quite possible that you could get in line early, but it's more than likely that you'll lose your money or your application will go into the endless loop of federal service centers. And hey, let's be patient and wait to see if it's TPS.
Yeah, great advice and guidance, I should say. Randy, thank you so much for that. One other reason why I had you come on and Adonia as well is I wanted to talk a little bit about AILA and what it's like to be a member, what it's like to be a member who volunteers. So Adonia, can I kick it to you next?
Sure. So thanks for having me on, Maggie. Randy, thanks so much for sharing that information. I think it's so incredibly important. So one of the reasons I've volunteered with AILA is it really is a way to build on professionalism through opportunities to share in leadership positions, network with attorneys that I might not get to engage with on a regular basis, and just really have the opportunity to see. And I think Maggie, I'm stealing this phrase from you, seeing how the sausage is made. Oftentimes when we get involved in these committees, we see what happens behind the scenes, what happens, what goes into having a liaison meeting, what goes into having that engagement and reporting back to the membership, which is just so critically important in understanding how things function. So volunteerism in so many ways has been important for me personally in my career development, in my professional development, and just really learning new skills.
And Adonia, in particular, I know you sort of wear a lot of different hats. You've been head of various committees ranging from UPL, EOIR. I know you've also done pro bono committee. These are heavy hitters in terms of the committees that do the most action at AILA. And we've got 32 of them, so we've got a lot of committees. Can you tell us also a little bit about your volunteerism in terms of stepping up and running for a position as a board of director on our board of directors?
Yeah, I think it's really worthwhile if you want to get more involved and really be a part of how AILA South Florida operates, or even AILA National. They're taking nominations nationally for both committees and different leadership positions. It's a really great way to add your input, your skills, and expertise in the way that the volunteer organization runs, and having individuals from different perspectives and different backgrounds and different practice areas, I think makes AILA South Florida a stronger organization. So it's been something really, for me personally, I really enjoyed being involved with AILA South Florida. The colleagues on the board and the executive committee are fantastic advocates. So I've really enjoyed the opportunity to get to know everybody better and provide my input. Given my background, working at a nonprofit has been really important to me.
Awesome, Adonia. These are all really good reasons to volunteer and step up. I know that elections for our board are going to run very soon. The nomination period runs through the month of March. Elections start in April, later April. So these are all good things to be looking out for. Randy, you've been familiar with AILA South Florida for years. I'm not going to say how long, I'll let you say it. But can you tell us from your perspective what it's been like to have an alliance with our organization, what it's been like to see volunteerism firsthand, a little bit from your perspective?
Well, you know, there's several different ways to volunteer or get involved, as you were saying, Maggie. And one is through the committee structure and participating in them. So at CLS and some of the other advocates, we also join many of these stakeholder committee meetings, and I can tell you that it is a great way not only to advocate for immigrant-friendly and lawyer-friendly policies, by the way, but it's an excellent professional opportunity to get introduced to the people who have some authority in shaping it, in adjudicating cases. I mean, if you're on the ERO committee, you get to know the folks, the jail keepers, right? So when you have a client, you now have a personal relationship with the leadership. And so it's been very effective for CLS in forging these relationships. And I know that it's been effective for the individual lawyers who have joined committees and worked closely with USCIS. I mean, it's a variety of different committees. So that's one way to really get involved and make a difference and to grow professionally. The other way is to take a pro bono case and be exposed to cases that you might not normally do. And this has been the great alliance that we've had for decades with AILA. And I can think of 3 really significant projects that we worked closely with AILA on. One was the mental health situation at Chrome. As you know, Chrome has a special unit for people with particularly significant mental health issues. Getting representation for this population has been very, very difficult. In fact, so difficult that there was a lawsuit in the Ninth Circuit that helped address some of the issues. That was a critical project. The second project in 2014, with the increase in the number of unaccompanied minors at the border, which continues today, AILA was so critical in helping us man this, what were then called the rocket dockets, and sitting in court as a friend of the court. So AILA was super instrumental. And I think also that young attorneys in particular who took cases really learned from taking these cases, and pro bono opportunities are a great way to learn and to expand your professional horizon. The third way that AILA has been really helpful to us, and I think to all of you, is in issue spotting. So issue spotting that can either lead to advocacy through the committee or to lawsuits. So we've had some great lawsuits that have happened. You know, on the TPS jurisdictional issue, this is being litigated. On Cuban adjustment, this is being litigated. And we work together with the private lawyers who brought those lawsuits because we can get you plaintiffs. And every one of you have all of these potential plaintiffs. So issue spot and work with your colleagues to change these policies that are really negatively impacting your caseload.
Randy, thank you so much for that. It really helps to explain the various ways that you can actually be a volunteer. And I have to agree with you in particular. I really didn't want to do an asylum case for the first time until I had some help. And I remember that my first asylum case was a case I did with Elizabeth Sanchez Kennedy. And at CLS, she supervised my case. I remember I took it on. It was a young 16-year-old, and we won. He got asylum, and it was a great feeling. But I really learned, the ins and outs of a case, what it's like to do intake, what it's like to prepare multiple drafts of a personal statement that really goes into the great detail. And there were so many facets in that case because he had other younger siblings who were also applying for asylum simultaneously. So it was an incredible experience. It taught me a lot. And it really helped me expand my level of practice. Adonia, I know that there's something coming up that I think you might want to plug while you're here. Can you tell us what that is?
Yes, absolutely.
4 minutes or less.
I will do it quickly. So for anybody that's not aware, this coming Saturday, February 20th, is AILA Citizenship Day. So AILA South Florida, AILA Central Florida, and various nonprofit organizations, including Catholic Legal Services, Americans for Immigrant Justice, the Office of New Americans, Florida Immigrant Coalition, so many organizations. We're partnering on a virtual Citizenship Day on Saturday. So if you aren't aware, you can sign up. The shifts are only a couple hours. It's a great way to pop in virtually via Zoom, help a client on their pathway to citizenship. We have it's a well-tuned finely organized, great event where you can, if you're not ready to take that whole case, but you have a couple hours on Saturday, join us. We have CLE trainings available, and we look forward to seeing you.
And I know
And-
that
and
it's a
Maggie-
well-oiled machine, because my associate did the training this morning and she was like, this is so well organized. Randy?
And well, I was just going to encourage people to volunteer. You know, it takes a lot, I think, for lawyers, and it took a lot for me being a kind of an old school lawyer to not be suspicious of having a client across the desk from you and fill out a paper form. But let me tell you, we switched last September to these virtual NATS clinics, and we did 500 of them virtually, and also very safely.
Yes,
which is a concern. And
I agree.
so
And the
it's
breakout
been
rooms,
great.
the helpers, you know, you guys categorize, like I was categorized, I think, as crimmigration the last time, Adonia. And so I would pop into it. You guys had me like teleporting me to different rooms, and it is very well organized. Everyone knows what they're doing. And I have to say that the non-immigration lawyers who were volunteering clearly had been trained so well, because you could tell the minute you got in there, their questions were pointed. They knew what they needed from you. If you were, you know, chiming in on crimmigration, they knew what they were doing. I literally had to be in there, in and out, and then assigned to my next room. So I have to agree with you both that this is a wonderful way to give back to the community and kind of get involved. I've also made some great friends volunteering at AILA, lifelong friends actually. So it's been wonderful for me too. Thank you so much for joining. I wanted to ask you the same questions that I had talked about with Randy and Adonia about really what it's like to volunteer here at AILA South Florida, what types of volunteering you've done, and how it's impacted both your practice and just your general stake in this legal community that we have of immigration lawyers. Can you talk to us about that?
Sure, of course. So this past year, I volunteered with the Business and Investment Committee, and it was a great experience because, you know, when you practice business immigration, you don't go to court, you don't see your colleagues on a daily basis, and the ability to share ideas, think of ways to think outside the box, especially in this year that we just went through, was just really invaluable. You know, just even being able to just share on the frustration of, it's been 3 months and my client hasn't received a receipt notice for the case that we filed. It's been such a roller coaster, and being able to access these great minds. I find that people who volunteer for AILA are excellent practitioners, and they're people I would trust to go with my own questions and, you know, seeking any other type of perspective on an issue that I'm facing. I've been responsible for putting together webinars. So our committee has really thought through, you know, who would be good speakers, who could really go in depth on the topics that we wanted to discuss. And I mean, there are people I had never met before that we invited to speak, and now they're part of my roster of you know, colleagues that I can trust in, you know, posing questions and seeking help when I'm struggling. So that has been a great benefit to me.
I am so appreciative that you went into that, because, you know, part of what, at least for my term, part of what I tried to, you know, foster, especially during the pandemic, right, is a sense of community. And it's really hard to do that when we couldn't see each other at lunches. We couldn't see each other at like a happy hour after work, or at a brown bag. Remember the brown bags? We used to have lunch brown bags. We used to have breakfast meetings, and the lunches. It was so many opportunities to see and rub elbows with other lawyers. And one of the things I have found invaluable is this sense of community. Is you know, when you volunteer, you're inevitably going to find a tidbit of information you didn't have in your toolbox previously. And if, you know, if the only thing that you took away from like a happy hour or a get together on Zoom was like one thing that helped your legal practice, it was totally worth it. So in a way, I really want to get the message out that volunteering, and of course my term is going to end in May, Alina Santana will be the next president. Volunteering, really being a yes person gets you really good things in the end. It really does pay off. And I think it's been great to have you in leadership in AELA. At least during my term, I have to say, BIC was really on point. You guys came up with wonderful webinars covering COVID-19 issues, really cutting edge information. I was so pleased with everything you guys came up with. And of course, now our main focus is just getting through the conference, which is next week. And it just feels like crazy that we're almost there. But definitely, and you're going to be a speaker at the conference, so thank you for that. I am so grateful to you and people like you who have stepped up and volunteered to lead and volunteered to help others. And I just do want to make one plug, which is that if you are a brand new member, right? You really just left law school, you just joined AELA, maybe you just hung up your shingle. There's also the cluster mentorship groups, which is put together by New Members Division. So if you were a business practitioner and you didn't feel like you were up to par with everybody else on your team, first of all, if you were leading it, I don't know if you would volunteer to do that again, but if you were leading it, you would make them feel welcome. But also there's the smaller cluster groups that really make it a point of welcoming new members. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but if you've seen it at play, can you give us a little bit about your take on it?
Well, I would speak more in general, but I've been practicing since 2005, and I got into, my love for immigration started when I was still in law school. I remember the first AELA event that I participated in was in Philadelphia when I was still a law student, and I got the student body to pay for my ticket to go. But what drove me to the practice really was that camaraderie. It was the helping each other. And this past year has shown us that unless we work together and we share our information and we, really help each other with questions that we've never seen before, because this has been unprecedented. We're really stronger once we help each other than we are in our own individual practices, trying to figure things out on our own. It can be a very isolating practice if you don't have that community. So yeah, mentorship is great, and AELA, has always been great to me in that aspect.
Thank you so much, Lucy. It's been a wonder to have you this year. Thank you. You're great. I hope you will continue to volunteer at AELA and participate in activities. And maybe I can see you in person and give you a hug, because I definitely would love to give you a virtual hug for all your help this year. I want to thank you for making time. I know your schedules are incredibly busy, so I really value your time. And I think the membership is going to be so grateful when they see this segment, especially for what we covered. Thank you so much.